Right now, our first item for this evening is going to be our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to consent? Ms. Pace, second. Mr. Patterson, second. We'll put it to a vote. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Okay, that matter passes 7-0. Next on the agenda, we have our policy monitoring, and I'll turn that over to our esteemed interim director, Dr. Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board, please find in your board packet information on executive limitation 3, personnel administration. This executive limitation has 15 compliance expectations that the director of schools shall assure the recruitment, employment, development, evaluation, and compensation of district employees, consultants, and contract workers in a manner necessary to not jeopardize achievement of its end policies, fiscal integrity, or the public image of the district. Specifically, the director has not changed his or her own compensation or benefits, nor has any employee been promised nor implied permanent employment. The Human Resources Department has a screening process to assist supervisors and principals in the selection and retention of candidates. Additionally, there are easily understood policies and procedures developed and available for all employees to review. Furthermore, there are multiple venues available to employees and the public for registering their complaints and/or concerns. All positions in the district have current job descriptions, and applicants are interviewed and hired based on requirements listed on the job description. Employee investigations, evaluations, and personal information are kept confidential pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated. CMCSS salary schedules are reviewed on a yearly basis and compared to similar districts in the state. Finally, the culture and work of the district is annually reviewed and realigned through the strategic planning process, and employees have a clear understanding of their connection to that student achievement and success. Mr. Chair, this concludes executive limitation 3, personnel administration.
Thank you, Dr. Huff. Do we have a motion to accept EO3? We have Mr. Baggett. Do we have a second? Mr. Garland. We'll open up for discussion. There being none, let's put it to a vote. All in favor of accepting EL3, personnel administration, please signify by raising your right hand. Okay, the motion passes 7-0. We're going to move on to reports at this point, and we'll turn it over to Ms. Grissom. Would you come forward? And she'll be talking on the search for that director.
Thank you, Chairman Nelson and members of the board. I placed at your seats a white folder that has all of the comments of the meetings that we conducted a few weeks ago. On page 1, if you'll all turn to page 1 of the report, these meetings, we asked that the school board not attend these meetings because I was the consultant doing the community outreach, and it's better, we think, if the board's not there so people feel more freely to talk and we can get their suggestions for your superintendent search. The meetings that we conducted are on page 1. We also provided the questions that we asked at each of the in-person meetings. We provided that online. 677 people responded to the online survey. Those results are in this report, as well as all the comments that were made at the in-person meetings. We asked 3 questions at each of our meetings. What are the good things going on in Clarksville and Montgomery County schools that we'd like to see continued? Number 2, what are the problems or challenges facing a new superintendent? And 3, what are the personal characteristics you'd like to see in a new superintendent? We asked those 3 questions, and then we asked all attendees to complete a form that had about 21 personal characteristics of a superintendent and asked them to rank those. So all the comments that were made in the in-person meetings are listed in this report by the meeting type. We did not list people's names, we didn't ask their names. We also included all comments that were made on the online survey is in the report. And the most common to the first question of what are the good things going on, the most common responses, and I've listed these on page 2 of your report. The academy programs, Grow Your Own Initiative, the Spanish Immersion Program, and quality teachers. There were a lot of comments made, but those were some of the top. The second question was what are the problems or challenges facing a new superintendent? And the most common responses were growth, the impact of COVID, teacher recruitment and retention, bus driver shortage, and parental involvement. For the third question, personal characteristics, the most common was they want someone that lives in the county, classroom experience, good listener, and a good communicator. If you will turn to page 5, that's the overview of all the meetings, starting with the Parental Advisory Council. Then we had elected officials, classified employees, school and district level administrators, teacher communication groups, the community forum, and then the online survey. So starting on page 5, for all of those groups and the online are everyone's comments to the first question, and then so on throughout the report. So you can look at those at your leisure. And also, we will email this interim report to the board secretary, and she can have that posted on your website so everyone can see the comments that were made. If you will now turn to page 25, it's the last page in the report. The form that we asked each of our attendees at the meetings and on the online survey, there were 21 personal characteristics. We asked folks to rank those. The highlighted items are the top 10. We took the top 10 items along with the comments that were made to come up with the proposed criteria for your new superintendent, which is listed on page 24, if you'll turn to page 24. The first criteria we're proposing is number 1, has exceptional listening skills with a commitment to accessibility and an open door policy. Number 2, speaks and writes effectively to communicate the successes as well as the needs of the school system. Number 3, has the wisdom to know when change is necessary and the ability and determination to generate such change even in the face of opposition. Number 4, has the ability to unify diverse groups and build and maintain high morale among employees. Number 5, has experience in working with students, parents, staff, the community, and the school board in developing long-range goals and strategies for the school system and the determination and ability to accomplish those goals. Number 6, seeks information and ideas relative to the problem, makes the decisions that demonstrate fairness, impartial judgment, appropriate analysis, and sensitivity for those affected by the decisions. Number 7, fosters support, confidence, and pride within the community for the school system through timely information sharing and providing meaningful opportunities to be involved. Number 8, proven ability to work with the county commission to develop and administer a comprehensive school budget, including allocation of resources, and also understands federal, state, and local funding issues. Number 9, one who can determine the effectiveness and efficiency of school personnel and programs and take the necessary action to enhance operations. Number 10, has a record of working effectively with the school board by keeping the board well informed, making clear and sound recommendations, standing firm with his or her decisions, sharing credit for its accomplishments, and enhancing the reputation and effectiveness of the board. Mr. Chairman, the board at some point needs to adopt the criteria that, you can revise the criteria as you see fit, it's your criteria, but we'll need the criteria in order to, post the vacancy. If you will look on the left side of your, folder that we provided, we have drafted a vacancy announcement brochure for your review. We'll need your comments on that. Don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you were planning to, vote on that tonight, or if you are moving that to another board meeting time. So with that, I'll entertain questions about the criteria, and then I do have questions on, the brochure. I did not see, and the board needs to discuss what minimum qualifications that you would like to include for the vacancy announcement. I looked in your policy governance and I did not see any minimum qualifications. As the board knows, the state law only requires a bachelor's degree in any subject, but this board can make whatever they would like for minimum qualifications. A majority of our boards in the state require more than a bachelor's degree. They typically require a master's degree with some 3 to 5 years experience in administration and teaching. So, Mr. Chairman?
Dr. Grissom, so do you actually need that this evening, or can we?
It's totally up to you. I can't post it until you approve the criteria. Number 2, I need the minimum qualifications. And then 3, I just need you to review the brochure to make sure that it reflects what you all would like to be in the brochure. So whatever the board, it's up to you all.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll cover it in our board discussion and consideration. And
For,
board consideration, it's coming further in the meeting.
oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So, I thank Dr. Grissom.
Okay, and then, I do think it would be, good for the board on page 4 of the report, procedures in the superintendent search process. I think the board needs to vote on procedures so you're not in the middle of the search and changing your process. I think you need to decide on what process you're gonna use and then stick with that throughout, the term of getting your new superintendent in place. So those items are on page 4. Number 1, TSBA will refer up to 4 candidates to the board for consideration. The board may accept or reject any of the candidates recommended by TSBA. New names may not be submitted by board members. How this process works with us as your search firm, all candidates will apply through our online portal. We will review all applications and screen those according to the criteria that the board adopts. We will select those candidates that best meet the criteria adopted by the board. I will bring those finalists back to you all, if you'll look on your timeline, on April the 12th. Then back to procedures on page 4. All members of the board will interview candidates in an open meeting. Only school board members will be allowed to ask questions during the interview. Number 3, the board will use the same questions to interview each semifinalist. Each board member will ask predetermined questions to each candidate. The board member will determine the questions to be asked. We think this is fair. You don't want to be interviewing 4 candidates and asking each candidate different questions. You need to be able to compare apples to apples. Number 4, the board will follow the same interview process and schedule for each candidate, regardless of whether the candidate is local or from out of town. Number 5, at the end of the process, each board member will list but not rank his or her top 2 choices on a written, signed ballot. Only those persons interviewed will be included on the ballot. A board member may not vote for the same person twice on any ballot. As you all know, state law, you cannot have secret ballots. So You'll have to sign your ballot and turn in for the board secretary to read out loud. Number 6, the candidate receiving the most votes may be invited to return for a second interview if the board thinks that's necessary. This person will not be identified as the board's first choice, but will become the board's candidate of focus. The board will follow the same procedure with the remaining candidate if necessary. At any time during this stage, a motion to enter into contract negotiations would be in order for the board. And number 7, an effort will be made to select a candidate who can receive a unanimous vote, so the superintendent will have a position of strong support for the board. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll entertain any questions before I leave.
Questions?
Members of the board create their own questions. Is there a limit to those questions? I mean, in numbers, not restricting what we ask, but is there a certain number from each board member or a limit of how many?
We will provide you a sample interview guide. We will develop questions that are tied directly to your criteria. And we typically, if you adopt 10 criteria, we typically will draft 2 to 3 questions per criteria. You can use those questions if you like. If you don't, you can use your own. But you just need to decide how long your board interview is gonna be. Typically, it's about an hour and a half. So you need to pace yourself to make sure you have enough time to get through all the questions that the board wants to ask each candidate.
Dr. Grissom, you said that we have asked for at least 4 board members. Are they gonna be coming in person for each meeting, or will they be digital? I mean,
That's up to the board. I was assuming that the interviews would be conducted in an open meeting in person.
okay, then my follow-up question is the cost for bringing them here part of your bill, or do we have to pay for that separately?
That would be separate. That would be the board's expense. Yes.
Okay, that's something the board needs to do.
And that's a typical expense a board would have. You know, these candidates are trying to get a job, but you also are trying to promote your district and get people to come to your district. So I think that's a very appropriate expense of the board if that person is from out of town, is to pay those travel expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Grissom, in the searches that you've done, normally, how many candidates actually come from out of town? Or, can we expect all 4 to be from out the area, or?
It varies. Some searches, they've been, if I report 5 finalists, we've had, 3 locals, 2 out of state. It just depends on each of the, in some searches, I may not have 5. I may not have 4. We're not gonna bring you 4 just to be bringing you 4. If there's only 2 candidates that we think best meet your criteria, we'll only bring 2. Our screening committee doesn't really look at where they're from. We look at what they've done to find the ones that best meet your criteria. So if you look at all of our past searches, we have a very good mix of local and non-local candidates as our finalists.
How many districts in Tennessee now are looking for directors approximately?
We are conducting 3. We're conducting yours, Knox County, and I'll go tomorrow night to present finalists to Knox. I go Thursday to do Blount County. I do know that Hamlin County is doing their own search. I believe Sevier County just announced not too long ago, they were doing a search. They announced their superintendent. I believe Lewis County, their superintendent just announced that he's retiring, so they'll be doing a search. Lebanon Special, which is in Wilson County, their superintendent just announced that he is retiring. And it seems like there's one more, I can't think of it, but.
We appreciate your effort. We appreciate, this will be my 3rd time to select a director, and I know a lot goes into it. And of course, we as a board, we appreciate what you do, and it's, a good, it's a tough decision, and And it's a good decision too, I mean, that, you know, that we move forward. And, again, we're just concerned of getting the best that's out there and that's available.
And we don't make your selection, I wanna make that clear, it's the board's decision, we don't participate in the interview process. You just hired us to help you with the legwork into the screening of the candidates. And we have a lot of contacts across the country, we're part of a national association of superintendent searchers, so we have contacts, in every state. And as you would imagine, everyone will list as a reference someone that's gonna say something good about them. So we call people that are not listed as a reference to check all of our candidates.
The questions that are generated, the candidates get those questions in advance for preparation, or do they just get asked a question and respond to an answer?
We will provide, if you're gonna use the sample questions we provide them to all candidates up front. Because number one, if you're candidate number one and it's an open meeting, then candidates 2, 3, and 4 are gonna know the questions because it's a public
I
meeting.
agree with that, I just read the
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah, and their questions, they're not yes or no, they're questions that they're gonna have to tell what experiences they've had and what they've done. So, but yes, we will provide those. The ones we provide you, we'll provide to the candidates as well.
Any other board members?
I have a question. During the last candidate selection, we interviewed them via electronically, and then we asked for those 4 to come individually, one each day, to actually to visit our schools, to talk to the teachers, and they went to the same school, talked to the same teachers, got to have a feel of what our district was like. Would it be possible for us to do that versus have all 4 of them sitting in here in one night? We do it in 4 days versus one?
Well, we actually recommend a schedule where each candidate comes on a separate day. They will come in the morning, meet with central office principals for an hour. They give a 10-minute, here's who I am, and then allow questions. And then we'll do the same, you know, much like the schedule we had for community input, same schedule we'll do for each candidate. Do that luncheon with county commission, mayor, let them give 10 minutes, let them ask questions, do the same thing for teachers. And then at night, have that board interview, which is a public meeting. But I think that's a good schedule, and during that day, sometimes either you'll get a realtor or someone that can take the candidate around Clarksville. Just do a drive by the schools, you don't have time to go in each one of them, but drive by, go look at housing if they're from out of county or out of state. But we think that's a good schedule, that each candidate spend an entire day here in Clarksville, meeting with folks, and then the interview at night. And then we also provide a form to you all that the community, after they hear each interview, is a candidate reaction form where people can just write, you know, I really liked candidate on Monday night, here are the reasons. And it's just for information for the board. It gives you a good feel of what the community thinks about each of the candidates.
Okay, question, once we approve all this stuff, how long before y'all would have the job posted?
As soon as we get it and can make the corrections that same day. If you give it to us tomorrow, we'll post it tomorrow.
Okay.
And if I'm gonna report back to you April the 12th, the sooner that you can approve it, the better, so I can get it posted.
Any other board members?
I would like to suggest that the prospective candidates not be allowed to be in the open boards until they're interviewed, because I think they should not get an advantage over the other candidates. That's just my take on that.
Now, you can't prevent someone to come, you know, it's a public meeting, it's an open meeting, all of your board meetings are subject to open meetings, so you cannot tell someone they can't come. But if you all video your meetings, do you video record your meetings?
No.
Or somebody can, they're gonna share it with some, you know, there's ways people can do that. I don't know a lot of candidates that come and sit and watch the other interviews, but, I don't believe that's something that we can ask candidates that they can't come.
Anything else, board? There being none, thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing back from you.
So we'll move on to reports number 2, zoning recommendation.
Yes, sir. 2022-2023 zoning recommendation, I'd like to call Mr. Norm Rumley up. Mr. Rumley is our Chief Operations Officer, and also joining him will be Mr. Schwartz, from RSP and Associates. Mr. Rumley, first.
Thank you, Dr. Love. Good evening, board. In accordance with board policy EL12 rezoning, it is necessary to complete a comprehensive process of identifying attendance boundaries for new schools and for addressing school capacity needs across the district. I would like to provide a historical background on this process so that we can all appreciate why we are here tonight. Montgomery County has more than 200,000 residents, and CMCSS serves almost 38,000 students. On average, 677 new students are added to our class rolls each and every year. Recently, growth has trended closer to 1,000 new students. CMCSS reviews and updates its 10-year construction plan and 20-year facility needs projections annually. This report is posted and updated on the CMCSS website every fall. Until 2015, CMCSS was building or opening a new school every 1.4 years. However, a new school has not been opened in Montgomery County since Oakland Elementary School in 2015. In Montgomery County, residential growth precedes new school construction. The Clarksville-Montgomery County Regional Planning Commission tracks residential growth data throughout our county. They measure growth in approved lots, which gives us a long-range picture of growth and where growth might occur, and in building permits, which is a short-range snapshot of where building is occurring. Currently, there are over 4,800 residential lots approved for construction in the next 5 to 10 years. There are over 1,900 active building permits for residential construction in the next 1 to 2 years. Clarksville, Tennessee was recently named the hottest housing market in the nation by a national real estate magazine. Clarksville has had more homes contracted in the past 90 days than anywhere else in the United States. According to the Regional Planning Commission, Clarksville has had more homes contracted in the past 90 days than anywhere else in the United States of America. According to the Regional Planning Commission, this growth has primarily occurred in the Northeast, Rossview, CHS, and West Creek areas of our district. We are now addressing this growth through new school capacity. By law, the Clarksville-Montgomery County School Board works closely with the Montgomery County Commission to acquire funding approvals for purchases of land, design of buildings, and for construction of schools. The resolution to fund the architectural design of our 8th middle and high schools was approved by the school board in 2018, and it was approved by the county commission in 2019. A joint land acquisition committee made up of members of county government, the Regional Planning Commission, and CMCSS Board of Education voted to recommend approval of a proposal for the site development and purchase of 116 acres for a 3-school campus on Rossview Road, east of I-24. This project was approved and funded by the Montgomery County Commission in August of 2020. We are now preparing to open these new schools that have been over 5 years in the making. We're very excited that Kirkwood Middle School is approaching 70% completion, and it's on track to open in August of 2022 to address middle school capacities throughout the district. Kirkwood High School has just begun construction and is on track to open in August of 2023 to address high school capacities throughout the district. These projects represent over $150 million in local tax funding and are the first new schools to be constructed in 8 years. With this significant investment in new capacity comes the need to rezone students to relieve overcrowding across the district. We engaged and have been working with a third-party vendor, RSP and Associates, for the past 5 months to support us in this comprehensive effort. They have been analyzing zoning boundary data, gathering feedback, and leading public engagement with key stakeholders and the community. They produced student forecast models, and we've considered all of this. On January 4th, we presented the staff recommendation developed by a community zoning project team to rezone middle and high school students for the 2022-23 school year. Since then, we've created a public portal for zoning information and feedback. This information can be found at cmcss.net/zoning. We put a lot of effort into analyzing the feedback that we received from the community regarding student needs, boundaries, transportation, and other concerns. We also put a lot of effort into creating an FAQ that addresses much of this feedback. This FAQ and these details can be found at cmcss.net/zoning. We've poured through all of this feedback, looking for ways to use it to improve the recommendation to what we are presenting to you tonight. At this time, it's my pleasure to once again introduce the CEO of RSP and Associates to present our formal staff zoning recommendation for the 2022-23 school year. This recommendation is scheduled for final vote on February 22nd. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Robert Schwartz.
Thank you, Norm. Good evening, Superintendent, board members. I'm going to go over the information that takes what you heard from Norm, which is very compelling for the buildings needing to open here in the next 2 school years. So you've heard a little bit about RSP. In these slides, you're going to see some more information about RSP and what we do. I'm going to spend more of my time as we move through these slides towards the end about the actual proposal. But we wanted you to have each of these particular slides that you see coming up on your screens because they build the story from what Norm said into how the things actually took place in each of these team meetings and getting us through the public inputs and then to the formal proposal tonight. The process that we had is up here on your screen. You can see we're at the final night for the work that RSP has worked with the team and the community through. Each entity had their own element in which they were to respond to. We were working through all the data analytics. The big thing with redistricting, you guys know this, with all the information that Norm just said, with this amount of growth, we're having to move students, and it's not very popular, it's not very easy. And when I show you some things on the maps, it will help you understand how we tried to answer some of the questions, some of the desires that people in the community maybe wanted to see with whatever this proposal would be. So we had this ACE concept that was wrapped all around this. We have your boundary criteria. Last time I read each of these to you. Again, go out to the website, you'll be able to see each of your criteria that we use as the metrics to understand how does anything we change in your district meet each of those criteria. And you'll see some of them, you can meet them more completely than others. It depends on the lens that you're looking through. If you're focusing on, let's say, transportation, you may see some areas that are closer to a building and say, why are they not going to that building? But then when we start to look at how do you minimize students that are disrupted, you may want to keep them at the same building that they're currently at. So again, these criteria are sometimes in conflict with each other. We've provided the recaps of each of the meetings from meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3. We did have some general public input themes. A lot of it really related to wanting to be at the school that you may be closer to. Driving around the community, it's always easier to be at that closer facility. That was one of the major themes, as well as wanting to continue in the buildings with which their students have started. Everything always is based on data, and so we provided you some visuals here. There will be a final report that gives all the different details, talks a lot about some of the things that Norm spoke about with the location of where we're seeing these developments, the number of units, what that impact is on demographics. We have a visual of where our current boundaries are. In this case, as our focus has been on the secondary, the focus of our middle school and high schools. We had capacity guidelines that were set for those buildings and what is best for those students and their experience are limited by what that capacity is. We spoke a lot in the public inputs, even in your last board meeting where we talked about capacity in the perspective of what we have for brick and mortar and then what we have with all the mobiles or portables that are at these sites. And the ideal is to have them all in the brick and mortar. So we can't do that with the growth that we're experiencing and the limits that we have on actual brick and mortar space. We've provided projections that take into account this growth, this astronomical potential for growth, and what that may mean for enrollment at each of the levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. So on that slide, you can see how we're projecting upward. We also provide the breakdown of the projections by building and show how that relates to capacity, whether it's the brick and mortar capacity or the brick and mortar plus the portables. And all that with all your buildings. Really the takeaway from all your growth is you're growing and we have to do something. This is why you've hired RSP to look at what is the forecast and how can we create some boundaries that can be long-serving. Long-serving in the sense that if you keep growing at the rate that you're growing, we need to be planning for more brick and mortar space at each of the levels. So as we got into what was the proposed concept here, there were a lot of changes that were made up to the point of where we went to the public input. And then we started to listen to what the ideas were behind the public input, and there were some challenges. And so as we walk through what this looks like, and these should be somewhat familiar, you saw these in the public inputs, we showed visually what the concept looks like. And we identified that in a way that you could visualize if I live in a particular area, how will I be impacted? We showed what those projections look like, and again, relating it back to your capacity of brick and mortar capacity, and then the brick and mortar plus the portable capacity. And we can see that we have challenges right now with the buildings and why the Kirkwood sites really make a lot of sense. In the proposal at the middle school level with the projections, you will see that we have no issues with the brick and mortar capacity until we get to 24-25, and that happens at Northeast. And then you can see as we move through all the way through 26-27, that's where we start to run into problems with both brick and mortar and the portable spaces at the buildings, specifically at Kenwood and at Northeast. Again, what I always bring to everyone's attention is when we look at the available no portable, or what I'm saying is brick and mortar, we have with the Kirkwood site coming online, 9,468 seats that we can serve. And you can see in 25-26, we exceed that. We're gonna have 9,489. So we don't have enough brick and mortar capacity with whatever we try to do with the changes. When we look at the high school, we are able to keep within the guidelines of your capacity until 25-26, and that's where we run into challenges at Northeast, at both the portable and no portable capacity in 25-26 and 26-27. Again, when we look at the available brick and mortar, we have 12,859 when the new high school comes online in 23-24, and you can see that we're almost there by 26-27 with 12,412. We've provided information that shows what the special programming is as it relates to the current situation, and then with the proposed solution to you this evening to show, is there any significant differences, or did we make something maybe a little bit better? What we tried to highlight is if it was 5% more or less, we would have shaded something. We're within 5% on each of the categories of the English language learners or special education students at both the middle school and the high school. We've also broken out the data in a way that you can see it with the ethnicity of the current students and how that relates with the recommended boundary plan. You can see the same thing for the high school. Again, nothing changes more than 5%, which is why we have not shaded anything. We've also had the district provide us information about SES, so it's the socioeconomic status, what that looks like with the current students in this proposed boundary, and you can see that breakdown by grade and what that school average would be for each of the grades being served in both the middle school and the high school. We've also provided a table that shows the students that are impacted by the boundary change. This table is understood by looking at the first column. This is based on where the student resides, and then with the proposed option, as you go along each of those columns, you can see where those students would be attending. So again, at the middle school, we have about 19% that are impacted. If we literally said, everybody, where you go now, this is where you will go in the proposed plan. At the high school, it's about 18%. I'll come back to the student options or grandfathering that will further reduce the number of students that are impacted based on the parent choice for their students. So I think one of the big questions that comes out from the public inputs was, why is the plan still the same? Did you not listen to some of our thoughts, things that we maybe stated in the public inputs or wrote in on the items that you see on the question and answer section of the board studies? I'm going to show you some visuals of what our challenges are. So this map here, and I did this in the public inputs, we have multiple schools that are in a situation where we have too many students. So it wasn't just simply Rossview is too many, or opening up the Kirkwood site, we just break Rossview and everybody that's not at Rossview goes to Kirkwood. We had many different challenges that you can see in some of the appendixes that we have in this presentation with the student location heat map. But when we looked at this with West Creek, what you see in this PDF, the large numbers, in West Creek, we knew we had to get about 630 students out to try to have a capacity that's somewhat within reasonability of what's there with the brick and mortar and with the portables. At Northeast, about 225. Then in Rossview, we have about 620 students, too many. And then down in Clarksville, we have about 150 too many students. So you can see we had lots of moving parts. And then what I circled was where each of these complexes are. So where the facilities are located. Where the facilities are located, where the students are, when you start to factor in each of the boundary criteria, as we worked this with the boundary team, it became apparent that what we've proposed going into the public inputs really is the best plan to try to address each of your boundary criteria. Again, if you looked at the boundary criteria myopically through just saying one of them, you may say this doesn't fit that completely, and I would agree with you. But we had to look at all of the criteria and try to find a plan that's going to be reasonable with what takes place in those buildings for students' education. So that's kind of a visual of that. So this gets then to the last piece of the proposal. And so knowing that we have lots of challenges coming out of the pandemic with social and mental well-being, one of the things that administration and RSP has tried to work through is a proposal to try to provide students, households, the ability to make a choice and choose which building their student will go through. So I'm going to outline what this is, and if I get too far out, normal, probably reel it in, but I'll try to bring together what this proposal means. So we have two tables on this page. One that would be for Kirkwood Middle School when it opens, and then the bottom table for Kirkwood High School. What we've outlined here is the first column that says current 21-22, that's the grade they are in this current school year. Next year, as a rising students, where do they potentially have an option? And so for next year, for the 22-23 school year, if you're a fifth grader rising to be a sixth grader, you would go to the new proposed boundary that you're seeing on those maps. If you're a current sixth grader rising to be a seventh grader, you have an option to choose between the building that you are currently attending and the building that you would be assigned. The same thing for seventh grade, rising to be eighth graders, you have an option next year to choose between the building that you currently reside and the building that you would be assigned. The key thing in this proposal is, with that option, if you choose to remain at the building that you're currently attending, you would have to provide the transportation for the student to get to that building. That's the key takeaway there. We look at the high school that opens the following year, the 23-24 school year. You can see this table follows that same pattern of the grade that you would be in that year. In this case, it would be 22-23, and then whether or not you have an option to be able to remain at the building that you're currently assigned. Did I get that all good, Norm? All right, good. All right, so that's the proposal. The next step is at your February 22nd meetings when you officially adopt the proposal. Right now, I open up for questions, comments. If I can answer them in an expert way, I will. If not, I will work through Norm to provide you the right answer.
Under this plan, would those schools still be needing those portables in order to actually operate? If they stayed in the school that they're in right now?
Our plan is to leave the portables in place in the event that they are needed. Right now, they're properly placed for additional growth, so our plan is to leave them in place.
Okay, I asked that question because if they would move to the new school, they would be in brick and mortar, am I correct? Those students that's gonna stay where they are, if they would move to the new school, they'll be in a new building.
Correct. Well, it depends. So there are several groups. Some students may be moving from an existing building to an existing building, but there would be capacity in that building based on these numbers to absorb those students.
The key thing, just to follow up on that, it's gonna be the choices that the parents make for their students, that once that deadline hits, then you're gonna be able to know more fully what are the class sizes, the number of kids, how you may have to use the portables. Because when you go back to those tables, you can see for the most part, we've been able to, if everyone went where they would need to go based on the proposal, we can get them in the brick and mortar. But if some of them stay, that gets into why the portables need relevance in remaining at those facilities.
My concern is that because there are gonna be some that's gonna be complaining because we built a brand new school and their child is having to be taught in a portable. And that's the reason why I asked that question. So you answered my question, I appreciate it.
Just a comment that, and I guess to you, the main thing that we need to make sure that they realize that after the first couple of years, that they do not have a choice of where their high school, I'm talking about the middle schoolers now, that they do not have a choice of which high school they go to. They, as I understand it, they will go to the high school that they are zoned in at today's time. Is that my understanding? They can still stay in middle school, but once the 2 years is, the 2-year option is over, or 3 years in the high school, that they will be required to go to the original zoning high school that they were originally zoned to today.
There'll be the existing 6th and 7th graders will be going to a new high school when they reach high school.
Right, I understand that. I just want to make sure the parents understand.
We'll allow them to transition to that new high school at their current school.
There were lots of questions that came up in the public forums about transportation. And I know this is not your problem, but how we created a plan addressed that transportation yet. I haven't heard anything. I know we intend to, but I haven't seen a plan, no, how it's gonna function.
So, as Mr. Schwartz noted, once we know what the enrollment is.
Norm, can you speak in the microphone, please? Thank you.
Once we know, what the enrollment is and we get the student rolls, we will be able to do a transportation plan. We've done a cursory transportation plan, and that information, those details have been provided on the FAQ at cmcss.net/zoning. So we picked several of the areas and put some detailed information about what that transportation plan would look like.
Do you see that there would be maybe a less transportation if people are transporting some of their students? I know all of them won't be, but of course, the buses will not be able to take any of those students because they don't qualify, because the parents will be taking them in some form or fashion. And that it could alleviate some of the routes by doing this also.
Depending on how many parents take the option, that is correct.
Am I correct in that the only change from the original proposal is allowing students the option, rising 7th and 8th graders to 10th, 11th, 12th grade? There's no changes from the original proposal to any of the boundaries, is that correct?
Correct.
Any other board members?
I like it a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grumley and Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Chris Renaud, our Chief Financial Officer, to come up and share the 21-22 budget amendments.
I'll make sure I speak in the mic this time. Good evening, board members. So I'm presenting to you budget amendments for our 21-22 fiscal year. Just wanted to give you a highlight, an overview of what the amendments are in there. 10.4 million is associated with increase in expenses against the $7.9 million increase in revenue, projected revenue. So obviously when you have more expenses than you do revenue, the money's got to come somewhere. So we'll be deducting $2.5 million out of our fund balance. What's primarily driving these are policy and procedure updates driven from the comptroller's office, an increase in revenue projected from local option sales tax. Thank you, our Montgomery citizens. Grants that we've been awarded, higher than forecasted insurance claims, both in our OJI, our on-the-job injury insurance, and our property and casualty associated with the Northwest flooding. An increase in forecast in payroll and benefits that I'll highlight shortly, and then an increase in plan participation or plan participants upgrading their medical plan at a higher cost to the district. So on the revenue side, what's driving that $7.9 million increase in revenue? $6.9 million of it is coming from local sources, $968,000 from federal, and then $25,000 non-revenue, which is additional revenue that we've gotten from our insurance claim associated with Northwest flooding. Here you can see reflected that we had a $6 million increase in our local, we're projecting a $6 million increase in our local option sales tax. We did take a reduction in revenue and other charges for services. That was through our technology protection plan. We were expecting revenue from our K through 5th grade students, but since they're not taking laptops home, they're not participating in that plan. So we're seeing a reduction in revenue from the technology protection plan. We're awarded $1.13 million in grants, those associated with the SEC grant, and an honorarium that we were awarded through Dr. Sean presenting at an organization. So that's our local revenue, again, that we're forecasting to increase by $6.9 million. Under the federal revenue, you can see the $913,000 is through the high cost reimbursement that we were awarded from the federal government. And then we also were awarded a Momentum Matrix grant for $55,000. Brings our total federal revenue, we're forecasting an increase of $968,000. And then, again, you can see where we're projecting into our budget the $25,000 we have already received from our reinsurer for the Northwest flooding. And so again, this is just overall, you see the total coming to $7.9 million that we're forecasting an increase in revenue. Bringing our total projected revenue for this fiscal year of $369 million. On the expense side, what's driving the $10.4 million increase in expenses? Again, the $7 million of that is being driven by policy and procedure updates through the comptroller's office, and I'll get into that later on. $2.1 million is the expenses associated with the grants that we were awarded, the FCC grant and the high cost reimbursement award. $540,000 of it is the projected increase in insurance claims, both through OJI and our Northwest flooding, our property and casualty. Payroll projections, I want to highlight that because in that, you'll see that brought up several times under several different categories, but I just wanted to make you aware of what's all included in the payroll projection adjustments that we're forecasting. One of those is overtime. We're seeing higher overtime than what we forecasted. The other one is 52 weeks in the year. Some of our team members get paid every 2 weeks. You would think there would be 26 pay periods. Well, fortunately, this year is one of those that they get 27. So there was an additional forecasted pay period that we did not account for when we were budgeting for our hourly team members. So you'll see corrections for those in our budget amendments as well. The second one, we're anticipating some vacation payouts. We've also added some positions, obviously with Kirkwood coming on, staffing to support that school when it starts up in August. And then in addition, as we replaced team members that have left us, we also hired some team members with more education and more experience, which obviously had an impact to our salary and benefits. So again, as you can see, salary under regular instruction, $600, that increase is associated with overtime. Alternative schools, that's the addition of hiring additional staff with more experience and more education. And they're also impacted by that extra 27th week payroll expense. Special education, you can see primarily those amendments are driven by the expenses associated with the grant that we were awarded, the revenue and the grant that we were awarded through high cost reimbursement. There is a deduction from where we transferred roles from special education to other school support. And I know I like to talk fast, so y'all stop me if you want me to. Student services, that has to do with the 27th week pay period. Health services, you have some costs incurred for overtime. And under student support, the $279,000 is where we moved from special education, and then the rest are associated with the executive order that we discussed in December, where we just did interfund transfer of funds for our Safe School Act to add servers to our school system, upgrade the servers in our school system. Again, there is no impact to the fund balance. That was just moving money around to better match the costs and the expenses associated with that. And again, that covers regular instruction support is again to align to the executive order that we presented to the board back in December, and then just move the money to the right accounts. One of the things that you saw when I talked earlier, the new expense for there's $1,000 added here for adult high school graduation, so they could have both a fall and spring graduation. Special education support, this is again mainly associated with the balancing the expenses to the revenue that we receive for the high cost reimbursement grant. Vocational education support, there's some adjustments again for payroll timing and the benefits associated with those additional pay. And then under technology, the biggest thing is budgeting for the FCC grant that we were awarded to provide wireless on the bus. So those are the largest expenses associated with technology. There is some payroll adjustments included in that as well. Board of Education, you'll see a $21,000 hit. That's where we had more retirees participating in our benefit, our insurance plan, and that's the board. That's the district's portion of their premium. And then you see a $540,000 increase. That's again to match the forecasted expenses for OJI and for the Northwest High School damage expenses that were associated in repairing and replacing after the flooding. Just a reminder to y'all, anything over $100,000, we do have a reinsurance and that we will recoup that loss. I'm just not allowed to forecast us until we get those payments. So just so y'all know Director of schools, you can see there's, small amounts associated with payroll timing, again, that 27th week. And then, we added additional postage a little higher than what we anticipated, sending out a lot of documents this year. So, just adding some funds to make sure we cover those expenses. And then under printing and communication, again, that 27th week payroll. And then we received some funds for reviewing charter schools, and we plan to expense those funds, and this is where we're recording that, where we're forecasting those expenses to come out of. Office of the principals, those are mainly salaries associated with the addition of Kirkwood staffing and the benefits associated with those that we're forecasting. Business affairs, again, that's payroll timing and the benefits associated with those. And we also had additional people participate, myself included, in the wonderful benefit plan that we have. So that comes at a cost to CMCSS. And then, again, in human resources, that was the addition of hiring those individuals to replace individuals that left the organization that have higher education and more experience and more education. Operations of the plant, payroll timing, we did add $10,000 to cover. We did not anticipate the inflation on custodial supplies, so we're just adding forecasting more expense in our custodial supplies. Maintenance of the plant, payroll timing, and we just moved some money around to the right, $5,000 from one account to the other account, so those are properly allocated. And then under early childhood education, again, those are payroll adjustments associated with adding new personnel with more experience, more education. So if you look at this big one, this $7 million, just to give y'all some insight, this is the money that we're moving for ESSER and our extended school programs. I brought an executive order requesting $5 million to fund all the cash outflow that we have to lay before we can get reimbursed from TDOE. And as before, we were recorded it as a debt that the federal fund owes the general purpose fund. The comptroller's office has changed their stance that they want you to go ahead and take that hit for that expense. So now this is where we're recording those expenses. So you can see the total expenditure is $10.4 million. Again, with the additional revenue that we're getting, the fund balance is only reducing by $2.5 million. And again, this is just reflecting that we're only using $2.4 million out of the fund balance because we're forecasting a $7.9 million increase in revenue, and so that's going to offset $7.9 million in expenses that we're forecasting to incur. Any questions on general purpose fund?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you said, hiring more teachers with more education. Do you forecast that, do you anticipate that going forward, that's also gonna be the case for the upcoming years, that you'll, continue to hire, more educated teachers?
That's something that we're gonna look at, anticipate. We can look at historically how we've replaced roles and individuals that transition. The only tricky part that comes through that, Mr. Chairman, is that we have a lot of experienced teachers.
Right.
And so, as they retire, getting those same level of teachers or staff in those roles is I'm sure, I won't want to speak for Janine, but it's not an easy endeavor.
Right. No, so are you, forecasting more retirees in the upcoming year?
That is something that we've just gone through our retiree discussions, and so, our Chief Human Resource Officer, Janine, will be giving me that forecast, and we'll definitely be considering that as well, sir.
Thank you. You keep saying additional salaries or whatever. I know the governor has proposed his budget. I believe it hasn't been approved yet.
Correct.
Is that correct? And do you recall how much the teacher increase was?
Sir, he did not mention that. He mentioned a lump sum to be distributed across the 68,000 teachers in the state.
While we're, I mean, I don't remember either, but while we're on the subject, and we have some of the, in our Montgomery County school committee, some of the people that are on the finance with the county, and whatever the proposal is from the state, I mean, even if we just do a small amount, of course, I know we have to initiate it in our budget, but this is something that I would like to see and propose to the board, that, you know, whether it's 1% increase, that we do our part as sharing the increase on our employees, as the state soon is going to do, although we haven't, again, they haven't had the budget yet, but just something to be thinking of in the future.
Mr. Pastor, I don't want to speak for Dr. Huff, but I can say from the SLT that has been made one of our main priorities as we go into the budget season for this next fiscal year
And again, I know it has to be shared with us, with their approval, but, I'd just like to see it.
All right, moving on. I promise these other ones aren't as long, okay? Child nutrition, we're not forecasting any increase in revenue. We are expecting, again, that 27th week in all of our staffing in child nutrition and the wonderful job that they do, but also we're anticipating some vacation payout to the tune of $28,000, forecasting $28,000. We did add some point of sale systems for adult high school and Spanish immersion at a cost of $5,000. So we're anticipating an increase in expenses of $34,000. Transportation, again, no forecast of additional revenue. We are looking at some expenses. I know that we mentioned earlier all the things that we're doing to try to keep our buses on the road, so we've incurred some additional expenses associated with overtime. The 27th week is an impact in there, and then also the late bus monitoring that is taking place as we send multiple loads or multiple bus drivers out of a particular school. So there's a higher than anticipated cost than what we initially budgeted for. There's some, I did contracted services. We added $10,000 as for the additional expenses that we expect to incur for charter buses for our sports teams, primarily our high schools. And then we just moved some funds around to cover for some additional software that we use to manage our fleet and transportation. But overall impact to transportation budget, we're expecting an increase of $190,000 in expenses. Extended school, this is where I talked about the $7 million on the interfund out of general purpose fund. This is where we're adding $2 million to cover our summer school activities. So we're gonna just add that $2 million to our fund balance in anticipation of the expenses occurring in June, July, and summer for our extended learning and summer school programs. This is just a reflection of an increase in the fund balance for our extended school program. Any other questions on those? Yes.
Have we received any COVID money?
Well, we get ours through the ESSER fund, sir. That's primarily ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3.
And when did that start?
It started last year, sir, as a matter of fact. We're into the second year already.
Okay.
And then we're in the first year of the final, which is ESSER 3, sir, which is planned to phase out in 2024.
And you're able to use that, of course, for some things that you were going to purchase anyway?
Yeah, yes, sir. That is something I'm aggressively pushing, that we can utilize those funds. So, and then the $5 million that we're making in the amendment will give us the cash flow to conduct capital projects, to buy IT resources and other things that we're looking, because we have to spend it before we can get reimbursed. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, and now we'll move to goal number 8, expand and support multiple pathways into the teaching profession. And we have Dr. Phyllis Casebolt here this evening and Tracy Coon. Welcome, ladies.
Good evening, Chairman Nelson, Dr. Huff, and distinguished board members. Thank you for allowing the Teacher Residency Pathway team to give an update on our current progress. My name is Tracy Coon, and also here with me tonight is Dr. Phyllis Casebolt. Unfortunately, our third member of our team, Lavita Radford, was unable to be with us tonight. Our focus is always on our strategic work of expanding and supporting multiple pathways into the teaching profession. We would like to begin by revisiting the reason the Teacher Residency Pathways was created. As you are aware, there is a national teacher shortage. Each year, we are selecting up to 80 residents to work in our schools as educational assistants while completing coursework to become a teacher. Another goal of the Teacher Residency Pathways is to provide an opportunity to increase diversity among our teachers so our district can move towards mirroring the student population. CMCSS is one of the largest employers in Clarksville, so investing in our community is a must. Any graduating high school senior, classified staff, or community member is welcome to apply for the pathways to become, hopefully, a career-long CMCSS teacher. The residency model allows for extensive bridge to practice
and time for residents to learn from excellent educators to hone their craft of teaching before they are placed in their own classroom. Here are our current demographics, and for the sake of time, I won't go through every single one of them, but I would like to highlight that in our current 3-year pathway called the Elementary Teacher Residence, we do have a 41% diverse population and a 33% overall diversity of residents. These are our current pathways that are active in our schools this year. Next year, we will continue the Lipscomb Teacher Residency as well as the Lipscomb Middle Teacher Residency pathways for those that already hold an undergraduate degree. We will also create a new pathway, and it's titled the Elementary Level Teacher Residency for the 3-year non-degree pathway. Collaboration is key. We could not do this without the assistance of many from the outside of CMCSS as well as internally. Our educational prep providers work with us to create a unique schedule that allows residents to work during the day and to go to classes in the evening. We have a FERPA agreement with each resident, so we are able to speak with professors to best meet the needs of each one of our residents. We work together to provide textbooks and other materials needed for the success in their coursework. Our partners within CMCSS are instrumental. This year, we worked with our Human Resources Department to create an online application for the teacher residency pathways. This will allow a seamless transition to those that are selected, that they will already have all the elements needed for the educational assistant position and will be able to be onboarded smoothly and in a timely manner so that they are ready to go to work on the first day of school. The communications department helps us get the word out. In a better sense of the word, they create the buzz for the teacher residency pathways. They even plan social media posts during winter break, so we appreciate them. Curriculum and instruction is always working to ensure our residents are given the opportunity for professional growth and learning so that they are ready to enter their classroom with excellence. The wraparound support is what makes our pathway different from others. At the school level, our multi-classroom leaders and mentor teachers work daily with residents to show them the necessary skill set to plan effective lessons, have classroom management, and teach to the best of their ability. They are teaching the residents the art and the science of education. This is where they learn to have the greatest impact on students, which is the most important aspect of our programs. Administrators are instrumental in building the culture of the school to embrace the teacher residents and guide them in professional and the ethics of being a teacher. All educators and support staff are key to the success of our residents as they are the ground forces of each school and work alongside to grow the community of the school. The cohort model means that they are all in this together. We have witnessed a seasoned resident mentor younger residents by bringing them to her home after school so they can be on our recitation Zoom meetings and work together to best understand the math being taught. It's beautiful to see them all work together. At the district level, my partner and I, along with Dr. Casewell, are the source of support in all areas needed. From gentle meetings on grades, professionalism, or participation in the cohort, we are here to support them. On one occasion, a resident shared a personal struggle with an electricity bill. We were able to point her towards resources that would help them keep the heat on in their home during the cold winter months. We have two fabulous Lipscomb liaisons who attend class with the residents and provide recitation for the Lipscomb residents. Their work is significant to the success of those pathways. Level and curriculum directors provide professional development to the mentor teachers to secure the message and fidelity of the residency model. All of our recitation specialists are CMCSS employees. They are always willing to lend their content expertise to the residents so that their learning has depth and a definite bridge to practice. At this time, Dr. Case Bolt will continue our presentation. Thank you, Tracy. So let's talk about recruitment for a minute. That's something that we do, and networking is very involved. It's very rewarding when we see current residents bring friends from the community to interest meetings. They accompany them. We have parents who've been through the residency program or are about to finish it, who bring their high school seniors to join in that recruitment season and interest meetings. So that tells you that there's buy-in from the participants. And that's a rewarding thing for all of us because it's just continuing to pour into our community. We hosted 3 interest meetings this season, and there were 136 attendees, which included parents of high school seniors with their seniors, community members, and classified employees. We received 188 applications. We are interviewing 188 applicants. We're in the midst of that. It's going to be a 2-month process. We started in January. Our goal is to end the last day of February. And we're excited about that because our next phase will be to present candidates to the universities for considerations. It's a multi-step process. So final selections will be made in the spring of 2022.
How many will actually be able to go through class?
80.
8.
So the next phase, this is not to be bragging in any way, but it's so important as educators. Those of you who have served as educators, you know that we're very skilled at borrowing best practices from anyone who has some great activity or skill set. And so we have the opportunity in accordance with the communications department to share the work. And that work is shared locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally. And that is such an honor. But there's also a benefit. For example, we presented at the American Association for Employment and Education Conference. And in return for presenting with all of the partners that were included, we received $1,000 that goes back to the teacher residents. And that helps us with supporting them through professional development and other supports for the residents. So that's really beneficial and a return to the district. I'm sure many of you saw the great emphasis on the apprenticeship being approved. The U.S. Department of Labor approved the first apprenticeship for teaching as a profession, as an apprenticeship. It was a rigorous process. It was very involved with our instruction team coming together to develop things, and we knew we needed to rely on support from the Tennessee Department of Education. And they were able to launch it at that greater landscape and had additional support, so it's a team effort. And that collaboration includes Workforce Essentials. Marla Rye has been phenomenal in providing support through this process. Austin Peay State University, Nashville State Community College, Tennessee Department of Education, and people within our district were very involved in the process. Clarkston Montgomery County School will be hosting 3 sessions with our elementary teacher residencies, ELTRs, early learning teacher residents, our elementary middle teacher residents, and our ETRs, elementary teacher residents, the next few weeks, to explain to them about the advantage of signing up to be an apprentice. It is such an honor to be the first apprentices approved in the nation and to sign and to be registered as an apprentice. So we're very excited about that. To be transparent, our team's learning about this process. So we are not the experts this time, but we will be. We are meeting with Marla Rye tomorrow afternoon to gain additional information. And then the following day, we're going to have the first cohort, our hourly learning teacher residents, come to sign if they are interested in being apprentices.
The components include a business involvement, and for us, that would be the district. Structured on the job training, those are the competencies. The competencies are aligned with the teacher evaluation model. So that's how we find those things, those areas that the teachers need to focus on. The teacher residents need to be equipped on day one when they're that classroom teacher, so then we'll have those structures in place. The related instruction occurs in multiple ways. The university coursework is critically important, and in this third year, the residents are seeing very clearly that bridge to practice. They see that's what is occurring in that college classroom has an application in the CMCSS classroom where they serve. And that's a unique opportunity for them because it enriches that learning for them. The rewards for skills gained would be step increases, but also performance evaluations. And with those mentor teachers along the way saying, wow, you've met this competency, congratulations, let's keep building on that. That's rewarding, that's intrinsic reward. It's not a financial reward, but it's very motivating. And then ultimately, they're going to receive that occupational credential, which will be that Tennessee teaching license. And we're so excited about this work and about the learning that goes along with it. So I know Tracy touched a little bit on the cohort unity, but it is so amazing to see in action. We see the teams coming together and supporting each other. If there's challenges with coursework, they help guide and coach each other. They also participate in professional development sessions. They engaged in the Mud Bowl at Austin P. Our cohort got together and did that. They really enjoyed it because they had an opportunity to experience that campus environment and setting. They also encourage each other when things are challenging, and we know that this season has been somewhat challenging for them. So our next steps will be to complete the interview and selection processes, to share the apprenticeship opportunities, to determine placements of teachers and residents. It is amazing. 3 years have gone by so quickly in many ways. But in August, 31 teachers from the 3-year program will be serving in classrooms and will have met their goals. And that is truly a blessing for us. We're excited about it. We'll be working on those teacher placements. It's amazing that the schools where they are hosted will have the first opportunity to hire them for employment by March 1st. For those not selected by March 1st, the HR department is hosting a career fair solely for our teacher residents. So they will have first opportunity for those positions in the district that will be available. And that is before the greater, larger career fair that will invite others from outside the community as well. So finally, this last part touches us deeply. Gregory Clay was in our teacher residency program, the 3-year program, and we selected him last year around this time. And he was such a special man. And after an extended illness, he passed on December 28th. And Gregory, if you got to know him, your life would be impacted and changed. He had a deep passion for serving students. His interview is one that we will not forget. He was an established gospel singer, a musician. He was a composer, absolutely amazing, and he was even on the national landscape in that realm and was very involved with that. And so our team had the opportunity to go to have the family hour before Celebration of Life service on January 5th. And I talked about the cohort a little bit, but some of the cohort members went the night before and they had a celebration musical to honor Gregory Clay. And so we're all in this together, we're here to support, and so our plan is to establish an opportunity to honor one selected teacher resident each year, someone involved in the 3-year program. We have not fully developed this idea, but Jillian McCain was Gregory's sister. I've been in communication with Jillian, and she said her family is so humbled and honored that we're going to do that, and she shared how much the residency program meant to Gregory, and they value and appreciate that. So at this time, we would be glad to answer any questions that you have.
At Lipscomb University, are they bringing all of their classes and instructors down to our county?
Yes, ma'am, they are, and if there are circumstances that require for those to be online, that's also done as well. So we have hybrid courses for them.
Are most of the classes in central office south?
Central Services South, yes, ma'am.
Any other board members?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hazel. Mr. Chair, that concludes our reports for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cup. Our next item is moving on to board discussion and considerations. First item is the resolution to the 2021-2022 budget amendments. Do we have a motion to accept the budget amendments?
That's it.
Mr. Garland, thank you. Discussion. There being none, let's move to a vote. All in favor of accepting the amendments, please signify by raising your right hand.
Correction, clarification. You're saying motion to discuss, you're not motion to approve, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So let's go to a vote. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Okay, 7-0. The motion passes. Now we're gonna move on to, number 2, which is consider and adopt the criteria for the director of school search. Do we have a motion?
I don't have a motion, but I think we need to, if we're gonna adopt anything, it would only be the section, she was set procedures. I don't think we need to adopt the whole thing, because I just got this tonight. I would like to review all the information from the groups that would ask questions and the answers they got, and then decide if we like the ones you suggested, or we need to change that priorities just a little bit on our end.
If I am understanding you correctly, you would like to move to the February 22nd meeting, or special call
We can
meeting?
do the whole thing, yeah, I don't want to vote on it tonight, because I just got this back tonight.
Do we have a motion to move to February 22nd for that vote? Mr. Baggett, do we have a second? Ms. Berry? All in favor of moving it to the 22nd, signify by raising your right hand. And it's unanimous, we'll move that to our next, our special court meeting on February 22nd.
One question there, Mr. Mellon, can you get in contact with the SBA and see if there's gonna be any issue on their end with us putting it off 2 weeks, meeting the April 12th deadline, to see if we need to adjust our schedule?
I will confirm, but I think she said tonight, just as soon as we can do it, the better, because it gets the job posted.
Right.
But there's no deadline that we're missing by waiting to February 22nd.
Okay, so the motion is voted on, and we're gonna move on to comments. For the capital liaison officer.
We don't have anything tonight.
Okay, thank you for coming. County commissioners.
We don't have anything.
Okay, thank you for coming. And board members, any comments?
We were glad to see Commissioner Gannon here tonight, and all the county commissioners. Thank you for being here.
I would like to thank the participants in the testimonial, however you want to call it, the people that came and spoke on behalf of the district. I really do, and I really enjoyed seeing the children because we need to hear from them as well. But I also like to thank the staff and your team, Dr. Huff, for the work that you put into this every day, of making sure that the things that our children need are being provided them. That's what this is all about. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about the children.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Couple of comments from me. I know a couple of weeks ago I had a discussion about Dr. Huff, and I asked her to look into what our current diversity looks like across the board, and I don't know if we can get that into a meeting in the near future. And the other thing is maybe we can get some insight into what we can do to stem some of the bullying or address it somehow, some way, to reduce it. And I know despite what parents tell children are gonna do what they wanna do, free will. But aside from that, I don't know if we have the ability to put something additional in place to try to help them. And at this point, we're gonna move on to, any other board members? Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and move into the Director of Schools report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have a couple of items this evening to share with you. First being the applications for school and programs of choice. This is really just a reminder for the community that application period ends on February 11th, which is this Friday, and that's to be able to apply for our programs for students. Also, just a reminder to our community that typically we have open enrollment that is a part of choosing programs of choice for students, but this year, due to zoning, those open enrollment seats will not be available until we go through our zoning. So we're looking at March of 2022 for that. So this is really just a reminder to our community. Next slide, we want to congratulate Girls Wrestling State Dual Champions, TSSAA, first in U.S. history to have a sanctioned duals championship for girls wrestling at the state level. On Saturday, the Rossview High Girls Wrestling Team won the state tournament, and the Clarksville High Girls Wrestling Team was the state runner-up. So we will bring both to the board for points of pride later, but just wanted to go ahead and congratulate those teams now since this happened over the weekend. Also, last evening, the resolution of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriated additional funds for site work to complete the Kirkwood School Complex. So that was discussed last night and placed on the consent agenda for the next commission meeting. Also, we received a grant, Northeast High School, from 10 System grant. And basically what this is 6 high schools in the state were chosen. And of course we had one of those. And over the next 2 years, those schools will partner with post-secondary institutions and employers to develop work-based courses that combine hands-on skill building with academic instruction, allowing students to gain both college credit and workplace experience while in high school. And at the last meeting, we had our commissioners come for our new school liaisons, and Commissioner Gannon was not here because he did have a conflict. He told me about it, and so that's why he wasn't here. It wasn't because he didn't want to be here, but he had a commitment. But I just want to welcome you personally, Commissioner Gannon, to this team. We appreciate you all, and as well as our other commissioners. Thank you. And that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Huff. Mr. Patterson has
Question, Commissioner, how come you have 4 districts? Does everybody else have 3?
No, everybody's got about 4.
Everybody has 4, okay. Good.
Somebody has 5. Most of them have.
There be any other issues from the board? There being none, We're going to adjourn.